Yo, what's cracking? Knots, gonna run you through some knots. Some of you fellas might have already seen these knots. A lot of you guys might already know these knots, but I'm gonna run through them anyway because there's a lot of people out there that don't know knots. Gonna start off with the figure eight. Figure eight. It's called a figure eight because it looks like an 8, and that is one of the strongest knots you can get. So it has the highest breaking strain out of any of the knot families. There's a couple of others. The Bowline, I think, has a pretty high breaking strain. Essentially, the more of a kink you've got in a knot, the more it weakens the knot. So the figure eight, because it's smooth bends, has less kink, so it's a stronger knot. So that's just the standard figure eight. We have the follow through figure eight and figure eight and a bite. Now figure eight and a bite. Figure eight and a bite. It's just a figure eight and a loop. A bite's a loop, so figure eight and a loop, figure eight and a bite. Always try to keep your knots nice and tidy, dress them well. Follow through figure eight ends up just like the figure eight on a bite. You just tie a figure eight in the line. The reason you tie a follow through figure eight is if you had to feed it through a carabiner or around a tree, or maybe through your car's recovery loop, your four-wheel drive recovery loop. Here we go. Follow through figure eight. Disadvantage of a figure eight is once it's been put under heaps of load, it's really hard to undo. So you can actually tie a figure nine, which is similar to a figure eight, but you put another twist in it before you go through. So it's very, very similar, but it's got another twist. It doesn't look like a 9. I think it's called a figure 9 just because it's an extra twist. So 8 plus 1 is 9. Maybe. I don't think that looks like a 9. If you fellas reckon that looks like a 9. So it's almost as strong as a figure 8, but because you've put an extra twist in it, it's easier to undo. If you're pulling a car out of a ditch and you've got a really good rope and you don't want to bash it with a rock to get the knot undone, you can put another twist in. I wonder if we can call that a figure 10. Yeah, let's just make up a new knot right there. It's called a figure 10, and it's got an extra twist in it, and it makes it way easier to undo. Figure 8. Where would I use a figure 8? I'd use a figure 8 if I had a really light breaking strain rope and I didn't want it to snap. Say if I was putting my life on the line, or if I was towing a ute out of a ditch, or in a fishing application I'd make a loop to put the sinker on, or to click into the swivel, to click my mono into the swivel that goes to the braid. That's where I'd use a figure 8 because of the high breaking strain of the figure 8 knot. You can have a double loop figure 8. I'm going to show you that while I'm here. You twist it like so, and then you put 2 loops through, and then instead of pulling all the way through, you get your big loop and you fold that all the way over, and then you pull those 2 loops through. That's if you need 2 loops for whatever. Maybe you're setting up an anchor system and you need a carabiner on each loop, or you can make one of these loops real massive and you can set up a self-equalizing system using the double loop figure of 8 with one small loop that the carabiner goes into and a massive loop that goes through your 3 anchor points, a massive loop that goes through your 3 anchor points and then back through the carabiner 2, 3, or you can do 4 or 5 if you make a real huge loop. But it's a lot of fluffing around doing a double loop figure of 8, and you can only do it if you have carabiners, or if you do a real intricate follow-through system. I'm not going to go into that. Have a Google if you want to learn more about that knot. Going to move on to the clove hitch. This knot is freaking awesome. It's such an awesome knot. It's really strong. It's really quick to tie if you have a carabiner. You can just go like that, smack it through the carabiner, and it's done. Or you can do a follow-through clove hitch. I'm going to tie it on my leg. Say if you are anchoring this onto a bar or the side of the ute or a trailer, you can wrap it round once, bring it out, wrap it round again, and you're looking to cross it over. So you bring it out, wrap it round once, bring it out, cross it over, and then go around and back up through that loop you've created, and that's a clove hitch. Now the advantage of a clove hitch, it's really quick to tie, it's a very, very strong knot, and it anchors on both ends, so I don't need to tie that up there. If I put heaps of pressure on that, that locks itself off. If I can throw a half inch to secure it, but you don't really need to. That's a really quick and easy knot, and it anchors off both ends. You can anchor it this way, you can anchor it that way. And the other hitch is a munter hitch or an Italian hitch, and that's used for abseiling. It's very similar to the clove hitch, but you wrap it around the rope and come back over again. And you can actually wrap that around a tree and you can abseil off the tree. pull it down that way, and the rope comes out, and you put pressure on the other end to slow it down, to slow yourself down. So that's a munter hitch or an Italian hitch. Used to abseil, or you can also use it to take and rope. Say if you were pulling a car out of a ditch, you'd tie this other rope onto the car and wrap it around a tree so that you can reset your main tow line. So you'd have someone on the end of this slowly taking and rope, and then when you go to reset your main line or your winch, because your winch gets to a certain point you need to reset it or reset the pulley, you can put pressure on the second line, someone's holding the munter hitch, take the weight up on the truck, reset it, and then keep going again. Really quick way to tie the munter hitch is similar to the clove hitch. Through a carabiner, done. Very, very effective in climbing situations, or jet boating if you're retrieving a sunken jet boat as well. So I'll show you that clove hitch quick tie. Both hands together, ready. I'll go real slow. Over and then cross them together, and you see the cross in there. That's what you're after for the clove hitch. And the munter hitch, very similar. You bring them, but you put your hands together and then pinch it, and that's the munter hitch on a quick tie. So in a climbing application or a swift water rescue scenario, if you're jet boating or whatever, you can tie it super quick, bang, whack a carabiner through, click it onto your anchor, and you're done. No fluffing around. Less fluff the better. Okay, we're on to sheep bend now. A sheep bend. Sheep bend's a very strong knot. This is the knot you want to use if you're tying vines together, or grasses or flax in a survival primitive rope application. It's used to join two ropes together. It's a really quick, really effective knot, and it also has a fishing application. The Albright knot is kind of like a modified sheep bend. Very, very good if you work around boats or ropes to know this knot. If you need to join two ropes really quickly, this is the knot for you. So generally, the thicker knot is the one you start off with, and you put a loop in that, and then the thinner knot comes up through the loop, and then it comes around and back through. That's the sheep bend. Super quick, super easy. I recommend tying a double sheep bend. So a double sheep bend, you just go around twice with the smaller rope. Chunk, and then tie that super tight. Now what an Albright knot is basically a sheep bend, but instead of a single or a double, you wrap it around 7 or 8 times. So I'd get a big tail on that. Say if I was tying an Albright knot fishing application, this would be my main rope, or my thicker rope, or my thicker line, and then the thinner line would be the one that I wrap around each the time. So I feed it up through the loop and then come around, and then I'd wrap it around 11, 12 times usually, depending on how thick your line is. 3, 4, 5. We're just going to go 6 times, not 11 times. You can see how that works. Ta-da! And that's an Albright knot, or it might be a modified Albright knot, I'm not too sure. And then when you're finished, when you've wrapped all the way up, you'd come around and you'd go back through that end, and then you'd snip them off there. That's a pretty good knot, the Albright knot. So that's the sheep bend, used to join two bits of rope together. And you can even do a sheep bend on a bite. So if you're tying two ropes together quickly and you want them to come undone quickly, you can. It's pretty simple. Instead of wrapping it around, you just poke a bite through, or a loop of rope through, and that's a sheep bend on a bite. If you just need to join two ropes quickly, and then you just pull that bite and she comes undone. That's sheep bend. What a marvelous knot. Man, there's so many knots. I'm just going to run through some of the basics. I reckon these are need to know knots. The next one is a bowline, or a bowline. I don't know why it's called a bowline or a bowline, because it's not the best knot to tie a boat up with. I guess if you've got a really heavy ship and it's taking a lot of strain, then it's a good knot, because you can secure the end. And now this is the rabbit in the tree. Rabbit goes through the hole. You guys might have heard about this knot or learnt it years ago and forgotten about it. This is the rabbit in the tree knot. So this is your main line. This is your tag end. You put a loop in the main line, that's your hole, and then this is the tree. That goes to whatever's holding your load there. So around here, all through there, that's the rabbit. She goes through the hole, a little rabbit through the hole, and then it goes around the tree, and then it goes back through the hole again, and then you just load it up. Now the advantage of this knot is that it takes a really heavy strain before it snaps, and it's really easy to undo as well. Mainly the easy to undo part of it. It's a strong knot, but it's very, very easy to undo. Disadvantage is if it's not under load and it's shaking around like that, it can actually come undone. See that? She's come undone and my boat's now floating away down the river, and I'm leading it a merry chase down the bank, or I'm still asleep and the boat disappears to get wrecked on the rocks or whatever. So there's a way you can actually secure that bowline. Now there's only one way to go through the hole and around the tree. If you go through the wrong way, it falls to bits and it doesn't work. So you'll see. You go through the hole and then around the tree. Now when you go around the tree, you can tell if you've gone the right way because that rope locks up on itself and doesn't fall to bits. So the way to secure this knot is just a follow through bowline. So you tie your normal bowline and then you just follow the main line around and back through and then tidy it all up, put heaps of pressure on it. It will loosen up a little bit, but it makes it a bit more secure. Now if you want to really make it super secure, give yourself a bit more of a tail, and then you can tie it, you can follow it through, and then you can put a couple of half hitches on there as well. 1, 2. That's another way to secure it a bit more. There is even another way to secure it, and you can do this with the figure 8 as well. You just get the rope, you tie it, and then you come around and you go through the hole that you've tied, like so. That's another way you can get the nut to not shake free. Bowline or bowline, what a good knot. Once again, the advantage of tying this knot is it's really easy to undo after you've put a heavy load on it. If you're tying a car out of a ditch, sometimes you have to manipulate the rope a bit, but you'll be able to get it undone. You won't have to cut the rope after dragging it out of the ditch. You can actually tie a double bowline on a bite and a double loop bowline on a bite and make a harness. I'll show you that as well. Why not, while we're here and going through these knots. So if you're tying a harness for someone, you want to get wrist to wrist. So outstretch your arms, wrist to wrist. See that loop? Big like that. Big loop like that, wrist to wrist. And where your other wrist is, that's where you put the loop for the rabbit to go around the tree. Now because you're tying a harness, you put that first loop through, and you want these 2 loops, or these 3 loops, sorry, the same length. So those double loops on the bottom are for your leg, and this one's for your waist to go through. Then you go around the tree, back through the hole again, ta-da, leaving those 3 loops like that. And there you go, that's a harness. Loop with that loop. Alright, and then I'm just going to work it up. This is quite a good knot to know, because if you're tar hunting, whatever, and you have to lower your mate down a cliff, you can quickly tie this knot, and there you have it. You have a harness, and you can lower yourself down a cliff, wrap the other end around the tree, or lower your mate down a cliff, wrap it around a tree, or set up some kind of anchor point. Bob's your uncle. Now if you want to go super safe, you can actually tie that knot and you can tie another knot. So if I've got enough room, I have. You can do a big loop here, and then I'm going to put this loop all the way over my body, so I'm surrounded by a loop like so. Put a twist in that end, put my arm through that twist, put a twist in the other end, put my arm through that twist, and I'm going to pull those loops that are over my arms, over my shoulder, and then you put a carabiner through there, and I've now got a chest harness and I've got a waist harness, super safe, and I can go bridge swinging, chuck myself off a bridge. Whee! It's a lot of fun. Don't recommend trying that at home if you don't have professional supervision, because if the rope snaps, you die. If your anchor fails, you die. And there has been a few people die bridge swinging in New Zealand. Alright, let's take that off there. Take that one off. This is also really good for a swiftwater rescue application, or if you're lowering someone down a cliff that isn't very confident and is scared of heights and don't know what they're doing, because you can put them in a double harness and they can go hands-free and they can just sit there while you lower them down. Whereas if you're in a normal harness, they usually have to hold on to the rope and they can freak out a bit. But this way you can just ragdoll them down and she's all good. Knots are awesome. So many other knots. Right, I'm going to show you fellas an Alpine butterfly now. An Alpine butterfly is a way to tie a dropper loop in a rope. This can be used in a fishing application as well, to tie a dropper loop for a hook to go on your fishing line. Alright, let's untie this knot here. What have I done? Made a hell of a mess. It goes through there. Here we go. Alpine butterfly. There's several different ways to tie this. It's a good idea to learn both of the different ways. There's probably more than 2, because then you've got 2 different ways to tie it. So the first way is to make 1 twist with the loop in the middle. You can see that's the loop in the middle, and then you go around under the knot and back up through the loop you've created, and then tie it like so. I reckon that way requires a bit more fluffing around than the other way. The other way for me personally is much easier, and I just wrap it around my hand once, twice, so there's 3 wraps, and then I'll put my hand under the bottom wrap, grab that loop comes up around the other 2 bits of rope and back through again. Pull that loop up and then side load it to finish the knot off. Alpine butterfly. In my last fishing video I showed you fellas how to tie a dropper loop at the end. It's an Alpine butterfly with a bit of a twist. Instead of just going once through, you pull that around and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm only going to do 3 on this because it's pretty hard to tie it with an actual rope. It's more suited to mono. Oh, you can't really see it, but tie it on mono and you'll be able to see that loop. It's a pretty cool knot. So that's the Alpine butterfly used as a dropper loop and a rope, and you can take a weak point out of the rope using that method too. So say I had a frayed bit in the rope that was cut almost all the way through here. What I do is I want to take that point out of the rope because it's a weak link, but I still want to use the rest of my rope. So instead of cutting it and tying a double fisherman, I can just throw a really quick Alpine butterfly in there. So that weak point would be the middle wrap. So I'd go 1, 2, so the weak point's the middle wrap, 3, and then I'd once again to tie it, put my hand under that rope, grab the weak point in the rope, pull it up over all the ropes and back through again, and then now I've taken that weak point out of the rope. Alpine butterfly. Alright, I'll show you fellas the double fisherman's knot now to join 2 ropes together. This is a little bit more secure than the sheep bend. The sheep bend, if it's shaking around heaps, can come undone. So the double fisherman, it's really simple. You just get 1 rope, 2 ropes, lay them over each other. So you got 2 tag ends facing opposite directions, and then grab 1 rope, wrap it back around itself once, twice. So I've got 2 wraps, and you can see that cross there. I want to put this tag end under that cross, like so. And then I flip the rope over and tie it exactly the same way. 1, 2 times around till I've got a cross, and then put that, oh yeah, hang on, can you see the cross? Yeah, put that under the cross and pull it through. Like so, that's the double fisherman's. And if you tie it correctly, it actually locks off against itself and makes itself nice and secure. Let's dress that up. There's the double fisherman's. Pretty good knot, that one. So to tie 2 ropes together, you can use it in a fishing application, but the modified Albright or the Albright knot's probably better if they're the same thickness, or the double uni knot. So we'll move on to the uni knot, shall we? So I'm going to leave that end as a double fisherman's, and I'm going to tie a uni knot on this side. So a uni knot is also super strong knot. I think it's the 2nd strongest fishing knot you can tie for line to hook. The Palomar knot is the strongest, and then the uni knot is the 2nd strongest. Alright, I'll show you the uni knot. Here we go. You run, once again, run that tag end along. You can see I've given myself a little bit more length on this one because you need to wrap it a few times. So I make the loop go back on itself. There's my tag end, and then I just wrap that loop around both of those lines. 1, 2. I'm just going to go 3 times, but on a fishing line you want to go 6 or 7. And then I'll pull that tight, work it down, and then that locks itself on there. And that's a uni knot. And then I'll do the same on the other side. I'm going to tie it the opposite way here so you fellas can see. Make a loop, come back on itself, there's the tag end, and then wrap it 6 or 7 times around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now you wouldn't tie this knot if you're using ropes, you'd only tie it if you're using fishing line, but it's very similar to the double fisherman's knot, in that it's a knot on this side, a knot on that side, and then you pull it together. And that's another knot you can use to join ropes of varying thicknesses. There is another one called the double blood knot. I'm not sure if you fellas have gone from mono to braid, and you're like, what knot do I use to get this bloody rope, the string onto the swivel, or the line onto the swivel? The uni knot's the knot you want to do. So I'll show you the Where was I going with that? Blood knot. Right, I'll show you the blood knot, the double blood knot first. This one's a bit of a fluff around to tie. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with that way, and then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with the other way, and then you've got a hole in the middle where those two lines meet. You feed one tag in through one direction and the other tag in through the other direction in the hole, and then you put those in your mouth or get your buddy to hold them, and then you pull the ends tight. And that snugs itself up. I haven't gone around 6 times on this rope because it doesn't really work. It only works on fishing line. But that's the double blood knot. So the single blood knot, that's the one that you use to tie a spinner on if you're fishing in freshwater. And this is the knot most people know, the fishing knot. So say this is our hook. You bring the line down, go around there, and then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you'd go through that bottom loop and back up through the loop you've created, and then you pull that tight, cinch it all down. So that's the blood knot. Won't work if you're trying to tie braid onto a hook or braid onto a swivel. It'll actually pull through. So that's where you need to tie the uni knot. So the uni knot in this application, it's the same knot. It just looks a bit different than when you're joining ropes together. You come back up, tag end comes back up the main line, and then you make a loop out of that tag end, crossing it back over the main line like so, and then you wrap up through the loop across both those lines 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Pull it down, bang. Uni knot. Bloody helicopters flying all over the place. Trucker's hitch. Going to show you fellas, fellasses, how to tie a trucker's hitch. Essentially this is just to tighten a load down if you want to tighten the load down on the back of your ute or your trailer, but you can also use it in a 4-wheel drive recovery application to tighten up a rope and then do a vector pull on that rope. A vector pull is when you get a tight rope and you pull right from the middle of the rope in a 90-degree angle, and it doubles the amount of force that that rope's holding. So you could set up a trucker's hitch, and then you could have a munter hitch on that end with someone holding the munter hitch, and then you can come and get 3 or 4 people on, vector pull it, and you'll get like an inch, and then as you let it back down, the guy holding the munter hitch takes up slack, and you can slowly get your vehicle out of a ditch without having to set up a winch or all the rest of it. But you can set up this trucker's hitch and use it as a 2-to-1, 3-to-1 if you've got pulleys and carabiners, because rope through rope creates a lot of friction and you'll just cut your rope. But if you've got pulleys, carabiners, and you know how to use them, you can use this trucker's hitch to set up a really quick 2-to-1 as well. I won't go through that, I'll just show you the basic trucker hitch. So the basic trucker's hitch is you go through the end. It's got to be running on that end, so the rope's got to be running up and down, so you've got to go through a loop or across a bar. If it's creating too much friction and it doesn't run freely, it kind of defeats the purpose. Or if the rope's crossed over, it can lock on and not work either. So make sure it's free running, and I'll show you the basic one first. You just put 1, 2, 3, 4 twists in. You can put 1 twist or 2 twists, but it's harder to undo. For 5 or 6 even, we'll tie a figure 10 in there, shall we? So figure 10, pull that through. So you create a loop by twisting around, and you pull a loop through the loop. Now the more twists you put in that, the easier it's going to be to undo. And then you just grab your tag end, put it through that loop, and you can cinch it tight. Now a lot of people forget how to tie this. They make the first loop, then they try to go through the first loop, so they put 2 or 3 twists in it, and then they make that loop and they try to put the tag in through that loop. Doesn't work. You've got to remember to make a loop and then put a loop through the loop, like so. Ta-da! So that's the first super easy trucker's hitch right there. Another one which is pretty cool is, I don't actually know what this one's called, but you get your line, your tag end, you lay it over the main line, you grab a loop, and then you put a little twist, a bit more of that, put a little twist, and that loop you've grabbed, you put through that twist, like so, and then you grab your tag end and pull it down onto that loop, cinch it tight. This is a really cool knot. It looks like it's going to fail because it's just a twisted rope that comes through there, but it does work, and it works bloody good. If it's bouncing, if the load's bouncing and it's flexing and this is losing its tension, it can pop undone. But if your load's not going to bounce, if it's static, not dynamic, static means not moving, dynamic means moving. If it's a static load and it's not going to bounce, it's all good to go. A bouncing load may be 5 or 6 rafts stacked on top of each other because they've got a bit of give, something like that. I'm going to show you a variation of this knot here. It's basically the same knot, but it's a little bit more secure. So you get your bottom end, there's my tag end going around the trailer and back up, grab a loop, make a loop, put a loop through a loop. Now that was that first one I just tied, but if you wanted to make it a bit more secure, you just make this loop a bit longer and you put another loop on that line and whack it through there. Sweet as. There we go. Now we got 2 loops and then a loop dragging off the bottom. Whoop. And I'll put that on there and then winch it down. I'd use this knot, this double loop, if I was tying a really heavy load of hay bales or something like that down. If it needed to be really tight and the load was super heavy, this is the one I'd use, this double loop system, because it spreads that weight over the 2 loops. If you've just got the 1 loop, it can put quite a bit of strain on that loop, which means the rope may snap if you go over a big bump or do a sweet jump with your load on the back or whatever. Pretty awesome truckers hitches there. I'm going to show you fellas a timber hitch now. Timber hitch is a pretty awesome knot. You come back up the line and you put a loop there. That's not how you bloody tie it. I've forgotten. There you go. You see, if you don't tie a knot often enough, you forget how to tie it and you don't use it. All right, let's go again. So you tie that knot and you go 1, twice around. There we go. That's how you tie it. Then you come back up and you come back through again. That's the timber hitch there. Pull it tight so it locks itself off. It's kind of like a prusik knot, and if it's slipping like so, because this is quite a thick knot, you just wrap it a few more times around. So I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'd come back up and I'd go through once, and I might even put another half hitch in there just to create a bit more friction. There we go. Crank that there. You can adjust it, slide it up and down, get it to your desired weight, pull it tight, and then it will lock off to adjust the fly. But I don't like using this knot because under high winds it can loosen and your fly goes saggy, or if it gets wet, the bloody rope can slide as well. Maybe that's not a timber hitch. Timber hitch might be another knot. I'm not going to bother googling it right now. We'll just call that a camping fly hitch. There's a certain name for it, can't remember. What other knots can we tie? Hang 10, I'm going to go look at my book.